Part 1. There is a brown bottle sitting in your bathroom cabinet right now that costs about $1, and most people only ever reach for it when they scrape a knee. But here is something the garden centers would rather you did not think too hard about. That same little bottle of hydrogen peroxide can quietly solve a shocking number of the problems you have been throwing money at all season long. Think about it. Hydrogen peroxide is just water with one extra oxygen atom hitching a ride. H2O2 instead of H2O, and that is the whole secret. When it touches soil, a leaf, or a sick root, that extra oxygen atom breaks loose, blasts the bad stuff, and then the whole thing collapses back into plain water and oxygen with absolutely no toxic residue left behind. Rain actually makes tiny amounts of it naturally, which is part of why your garden always looks a little greener after a storm. So before you spend another $40 on fungicides, root tonics, net sprays, and seed-starting gadgets, grab that brown bottle. We are going to walk through 15 real garden problems it can fix, and exactly how to use it, so you help your plants instead of hurting them. A quick note up front. Almost everything here uses the standard 3% hydrogen peroxide from the drugstore, and the golden rule is to dilute it. Used straight on tender leaves and roots, it is too strong. Watered down the right way, it is a quiet little workhorse. Let us get into it. Rescue a plant drowning in root rot. Root rot is the silent killer of houseplants and garden beds alike, and it almost always starts the same way. Too much water and not enough air down at the roots. When soil stays soggy, oxygen gets pushed out, and anaerobic bacteria and fungi move in to feast on the roots. By the time you see drooping, yellowing leaves up top, the damage is happening underground, where you cannot watch it. This is where hydrogen peroxide truly shines. When you pour a diluted solution into the soil, it does two jobs at once. The released oxygen kills off the anaerobic pathogens that thrive in waterlogged dirt, and it temporarily floods the root zone with the oxygen those suffocating roots are starving for. To make a root rot drench, mix 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide with about 4 parts water. Then pour it slowly around the base of the plant until the soil is saturated. You will see it fizz. That is the oxygen doing its work. Let it drain. Then reduce the watering schedule that caused the problem in the first place. For a milder maintenance dose, a tablespoon of 3% peroxide in a quart of water every week or two helps keep root zones healthy and oxygenated. Wipe out a fungus gnat infestation. If you have ever had a cloud of tiny black flies rise up every time you water your houseplants, you have met fungus gnats. They are more than annoying. The adults are just a nuisance, but it is their larvae living in the top inch of soil that do the real harm, chewing on tender roots and feeding on the fungus in damp potting mix. And they multiply fast. A single female can lay up to 200 eggs in moist soil during her short life. Hydrogen peroxide is one of the cheapest and most effective weapons you have against them. The larvae die on contact when the solution reaches them in the soil. Let the top of the soil dry out for a day or two first. Then mix 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide with 4 parts water and drench the soil like you are watering normally. You will hear and see it fizz as it hits the larvae. Here is the part people miss, though. The eggs usually survive that first treatment and hatch within a few days. So you need to repeat the drench about a week later to catch the new wave of larvae and finally break the breeding cycle. Most homes need 2 or 3 rounds to win the war. Stop powdery mildew and other leaf fungus. That ghostly white or gray dust creeping across your squash, cucumber, rose, and zinnia leaves is powdery mildew, one of the most common fungal diseases there is. Left alone, it spreads, weakens the plant, and can tank your harvest. Its cousin, downy mildew, does similar damage. The good news is that hydrogen peroxide's oxidizing power is genuinely good at killing the fungal spores on contact. To make a foliar spray, mix about 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide into a quart of water. Pour it into a spray bottle and coat the affected leaves, including the undersides where fungus loves to hide. Some gardeners go a little stronger with a 3-to-1 mix of water to peroxide for stubborn cases. 2 tips that make a real difference: spray in the early morning or evening, never in the hot midday sun, so the solution can dry before the heat hits and scorches the leaves, and repeat every couple of days until the mildew clears up. It will not repair leaves that are already covered, but it stops the spread cold and protects the healthy growth. Loosen up compacted, oxygen-starved soil. Not every soil problem comes from a bug or a disease. Sometimes your dirt is just tired, packed down hard, poorly draining, and choking your plant's roots of the air they need to breathe. Healthy roots need oxygen just as much as water, and compacted soil simply does not have enough of it. A hydrogen peroxide soil drench helps on 2 fronts here. As it breaks down, it releases oxygen directly into the root zone, and that burst of aeration helps stimulate stronger root growth and break up that tight, airless feeling in the soil. Mix 1 to 2 1 to 2 tablespoons of 3% hydrogen peroxide into a quart of water, and pour it over the root area until the soil is damp but not flooded. Repeat every couple of weeks during the growing season. You are not replacing good soil practices like adding compost and avoiding foot traffic on garden beds, but you are giving struggling roots a regular shot of the oxygen they have been missing, and stronger roots almost always mean a healthier, more productive plant up top. Get stubborn seeds to sprout faster. Few things test a gardener's patience like a tray of seeds that just sits there refusing to come up. Slow, patchy germination is incredibly common, especially with seeds that have hard outer coats or have been sitting in a drawer for a couple of seasons. Hydrogen peroxide gives them a head start in 2 ways. It softens and helps break down that tough seed coat, and it disinfects the surface of the seed so mold and fungus do not get a foothold while it is trying to sprout. There is solid research behind this too. Studies have found that priming seeds with hydrogen peroxide can improve germination rates and even boost the seedling's resistance to stress. To do it, soak your seeds in a diluted solution before planting. A common approach is a roughly 32-to-1 mix of water to 3% peroxide. For tougher seeds, let them soak anywhere from 10 or 20 minutes up to several hours. Delicate seeds want a much gentler, shorter dip. Then plant as usual. That little soak can be the difference between staring at empty soil and watching a whole tray pop up days ahead of schedule. Beat damping off before it kills your seedlings. If you have ever watched a flat of healthy little seedlings suddenly flop over at the soil line and collapse overnight, you have been hit by damping off. It is a heartbreaking fungal disease that strikes young seedlings in damp, crowded conditions. And once it starts, it can wipe out an entire tray in a day or 2. The fungi responsible live in soil, on dirty containers, and on contaminated tools. This is a problem hydrogen peroxide is much better at preventing than curing. So, the move here is to attack it before it ever shows up. Start by sanitizing your seed starting trays and pots, and use a light peroxide solution when watering your seedlings to keep the fungi that cause damping off from taking hold in the first place. A gentle drench, around a teaspoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide in a couple of cups of water, applied to the soil surface, helps knock back those fungal pathogens without harming the tender young roots. Combine that with good airflow and not overwatering, and you give your seedlings the clean, oxygen-rich start they need to make it to transplant day. Disinfect dirty tools, pots, and trays. Here is a problem most gardeners never even realize they are causing: spreading disease around their own garden on dirty tools. When you prune a sick branch and then move to a healthy plant with the same shears, you can carry fungal spores and bacteria right along with you. The same goes for reusing old pots and seed trays that still carry pathogens from last season's plants. Hydrogen peroxide is a fantastic food-safe disinfectant for exactly this. And this is one of the rare times you can skip the dilution. Garden professionals use 3% hydrogen peroxide at full strength to clean tools, pots, and propagation trays. Just wipe or spray your pruners, trowels, and shears with a straight 3% solution, and let it sit for a minute before wiping clean. It kills bacteria and viruses on surfaces in as little as 30 seconds to a minute. For pots and trays, give them a good spray and a scrub. It is a tiny habit that costs almost nothing and can save you from accidentally turning one sick plant into a whole bed of them. Part 2. Knock out aphids and other soft-bodied pests. Aphids, spider mites, mealybugs, and other soft-bodied insects can swarm a plant fast, sucking the life out of new growth and leaving sticky residue and curled leaves behind. Reaching for a harsh chemical pesticide is not always the answer, especially on vegetables and herbs you plan to eat. Hydrogen peroxide gives you a gentler first line of defense. Because these pests have soft bodies, a peroxide spray applied directly to them does real damage on contact. A common mix for pest control is a stronger ratio, about 1 part 3% peroxide to 3 parts water sprayed right onto the bugs and the parts of the plant where they are clustering. One big caution here: this stronger blend can be hard on sensitive plants. So, always spot test a single leaf first and wait a day to make sure it does not burn. Spray in the cooler parts of the day. Hit the undersides of leaves where pests hide and repeat as needed. It will not replace good garden hygiene, but ace a cheap, low-toxicity knockdown for an aphid outbreak. It is hard to beat. Clear the algae out of bird baths and fountains. Step outside on a warm week and check your bird bath, fountain, or any standing water feature, and you will probably find it turning green and slimy. Algae loves warm, still, sunny water, and once it takes over, it makes bird baths gross for the birds and clogs up fountain pumps. Hydrogen peroxide is a well-known algae fighter, and it is actually a popular choice for controlling algae in greenhouses and water features precisely because it breaks down into nothing but water and oxygen. To clean a green bird bath or fountain, dump the old water, then use hydrogen peroxide to scrub down the basin and kill the clinging algae. For ongoing control in a water feature, gardeners add small diluted amounts to keep algae from rebuilding. Because it leaves no toxic residue once it breaks down, it is a far friendlier choice around birds and pollinators than harsh algicides. So, always rinse a bird bath and refill it with clean water before the birds come back. A green, slimy bird bath becomes a clean one for the price of a few cents. Make cut flowers last days longer. Few things are more frustrating than bringing home a beautiful bouquet only to watch it wilt and brown within a few days. The culprit is usually bacteria building up in the vase water, clogging the stems so they cannot drink. Drop the right amount of hydrogen peroxide into the vase, and it keeps that water cleaner, helping your blooms stay fresh and vibrant longer. This is not just a folk tip either. There is actual science behind it. In one published study on cut lilies, adding hydrogen peroxide to the vase solution boosted their vase life from under 10 days to nearly 13, an extra 3 days of life from a few drops. To try it yourself, mix about half a tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 cup of vase water. And if you have a bigger vase, keep the ratio steady by using a full tablespoon per 2 cups. The study found the key is not to overdo it, because too much actually works against you. Get it right, and you will squeeze several extra days of beauty out of every bouquet. Banish white mold and fuzz on your soil. Ever notice a patch of white fuzzy mold creeping across the surface of your houseplant soil? It is a sign of too much moisture, poor airflow, and fungus settling in. And while it is usually not an immediate death sentence, it is a warning that conditions are off, and it often shows up right alongside fungus gnats and other damp soil troubles. Hydrogen peroxide handles this neatly because killing surface fungus is exactly what its oxidizing action does best. A light spray or a gentle drench across the top of the soil oxidizes and destroys that white mold without hurting your plant. Mix a mild solution, around 1 part of 3% hydrogen peroxide to 4 or 5 parts water, and spray or gently pour it over the affected soil surface. As always, you will see a little fizzing as it gets to work. Then address what caused it in the first place. Let the soil dry out more between waterings and improve the air circulation around the plant. The peroxide clears the mold you can see today, and better habits keep it from coming back tomorrow. Freshen up cloudy, stagnant water in reservoirs and barrels. If you grow hydroponically, or you keep a rain barrel, or you have any kind of water reservoir feeding your garden, you have probably dealt with water that turns cloudy, slimy, or just plain funky over time. Stagnant water grows bacteria and algae, and low oxygen levels in that water stress out plant roots that depend on it. Hydrogen peroxide is a go-to solution in the hydroponics world for exactly this reason. Add it in small, properly diluted amounts. It sanitizes the water by knocking back bacteria and algae, and it temporarily raises the dissolved oxygen level, which is great news for roots sitting in that water. For hydroponic systems, gardeners typically dose lightly and repeat every week or two to keep reservoirs clean and oxygen-rich, dialing it up a bit when fighting active algae or root rot. The same logic applies to a rain barrel that has gone stale before you use it on the garden. Because the peroxide breaks down into water and oxygen, you are not leaving behind anything that will harm the plants you are about to water. Clean water, happier roots, no expensive treatment system required. Protect fresh pruning cuts from infection. Every time you prune a branch, deadhead a rose, or cut back a tomato sucker, you are opening a fresh wound on the plant. And just like a cut on your own skin, that opening is an invitation for bacteria and fungus to move in. On valuable plants and fruit trees especially, an infected pruning cut can become a real problem that spreads back into healthy tissue. Since hydrogen peroxide is a proven antiseptic that kills bacteria and fungal spores on contact, it works as a quick, cheap way to clean those fresh cuts. A light dab or spray of 3% peroxide on a pruning wound helps disinfect the open tissue before pathogens can settle in. Pair this with the tool cleaning tip from earlier. Sanitize your shears between cuts, then treat the cut itself, and you have built a simple two-step defense that keeps your pruning from accidentally introducing disease. It is the same logic as cleaning a wound in a first aid kit, just applied to your garden. A few seconds of effort can spare you a much bigger headache down the line. Sanitize old potting soil so you can reuse it. Bags of potting mix are not cheap, and tossing out perfectly good soil at the end of every season feels wasteful. But reusing old potting soil is risky because it can be loaded with leftover fungal spores, pest eggs, and the pathogens that caused last year's problems. That is where a lot of gardeners get stuck. Pay up for new soil or gamble on the old stuff. Hydrogen peroxide gives you a middle path. A peroxide drench through old potting soil helps kill off lingering pathogens, fungus, and soft-bodied larvae or eggs hiding in the mix. giving you a cleaner medium to plant into without buying a whole new bag. Spread the soil out, then soak it with 1 part hydrogen peroxide to 4 parts water, and let it fizz and work before letting it dry. Keep in mind that peroxide also knocks back the beneficial microbes in soil. So, after treating reused mix, it is smart to refresh it with some compost or fresh nutrients before planting. Done right, this stretches your soil budget while breaking the cycle of recurring pests and disease. Clean seeds for safe storing and sprouting. Whether you are saving seeds from this year's garden to plant next spring, or you are sprouting seeds in a jar to eat, cleanliness matters more than most people realize. Seeds can carry surface bacteria, fungus, and mold spores that ruin them in storage, or, in the case of sprouts you are going to eat, pose a real food safety concern. A quick hydrogen peroxide soak handles both situations. The hydrogen peroxide disinfects the surface of the seeds, knocking back the mold and bacteria that cause them to rot in the seed packet or turn a batch of sprouts slimy. For seeds you are storing, a brief dip in a diluted solution followed by thorough drying helps them keep longer and cleaner. For sprouting, many people rinse seeds in a food-grade peroxide solution to cut down on the bacteria that can grow in that warm, wet sprouting environment. Either way, you are using that same $1 bottle to protect both your future harvest and your kitchen. Proof that a little hydrogen peroxide really does reach into every corner of the garden. So, there you have it. 15 garden headaches, from root rot to wilting bouquets, all quietly handled by one humble brown bottle you probably already own. The next time a plant problem has you reaching for your wallet at the garden center, remember that the cheapest, most versatile fix might already be sitting in your bathroom cabinet. Just keep that golden rule in mind. Dilute it right, test it on a small spot first, and let that extra little oxygen atom do the heavy lifting. If these tips have changed the way you look at the simple tools in your home, please subscribe and like the video. We are digging deep into the history and science that often gets overlooked. Let's grow a better future together. The next hidden treasure for your garden will be revealed very soon.